Attention ISS crew, this is Houston. This will be our final transmission to you. We have received confirmation that nuclear war has been declared on Earth and strikes are imminent. We have been ordered to take immediate cover and to cease all operations. There will be no return shuttle coming F. The transmission cut out suddenly and the only noise was the background hum of the space station. That can't be real, it must be some kind of drill. Yuri, our Russian flight engineer, was the first to speak, the rest of us just floated there, too stunned to speak. Chen shook his head slowly. No drill. Look. He pointed to one of the external camera feeds. We crowded around the small screen, watching in horror and as if to give us a show bright flashes erupted across the surface of the planet below. Even from our vantage point, 400 kilometers up, the devastation was unmistakable. My God, whispered Sarah, our British payload specialist. It's actually happening. The numbness I felt, it left and suddenly I felt like I was punched in the guts. My parents, my family, I yelled out in realization. I tried to run towards the Soyuz capsule to race home but Commander Chen grabbed my arm. Let go of me, I yelled, trying to free my arm, but he didn't speak. He didn't say a word, he just tightened his grip on my arm, just keeping his eyes locked on me. We just sat there like that for God knows how long until he shook his head at me before letting my arm go. We were trapped up here, watching the world burn, but no one wanted to admit it. We all had family. Key word, had. Okay, people, Chen spoke up, trying to cut through the stunned silence. We need to think. What's our status? We've got about 6 months of supplies, I said, trying to get my mind back in order. Oxygen, water, food. Maybe we can stretch it to 8 if we ration. And then what? We just die up here? Our systems officer David asked. Then we focus on survival, Chen said. We monitor what's happening down there. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks. We'll be rescued, they wouldn't leave us hanging. We all knew it was a lie, a desperate attempt to keep hope alive. Chen had always been great at seeing the bright side of things but he was always terrible at lying. Dr. Patel, our science officer, spoke up for the first time since the message transmission had come out. We should consider the long-term effects on Earth's atmosphere. The nuclear winter could last for years, maybe decades, no society can rebuild that quickly. None. That's assuming there's anyone left to experience it, David muttered under his breath but just loud enough for everyone to hear. Chen shot him a warning look and David backed off with his tail between his legs. All right, let's get to work. Jenna, Chen said facing me, I want you and Sarah to inventory our supplies. Every scrap of food, every drop of water, I want it in a list. Yuri, check our life support systems. Make sure we're running at peak efficiency. David, monitor all communications channels. Dr. Patel, I need you to analyze the data from our external sensors. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with down there. Everyone just dispersed into their own little corner of the station, no one said anything, no one nodded, we just moved. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic activity. We tried every communication channel, hoping to reach someone, anyone, on the surface. Every time it was nothing but static. The external camera showed a wave of dark clouds starting to cover the entire planet, the great green jewel had turned a murky dark dull brown. On the 4th day, David broke down. I can't do this, she sobbed, curled into a fetal position in our sleeping module. My family. They're all gone. Everyone's gone. What's the point? I held her as best I could in the zero gravity, her body was shaking with every little breath she took. We don't know that, I lied trying to keep a smile on my face. There could be survivors. We have to keep going, for them. We rationed our supplies, it had been weeks now and everyone seemed to be losing hope. The lack of supplies was taking its toll on everyone, we were losing our minds and our bodies at once. We had slowly begun giving up, we didn't admit it but it was true, we all did nothing but wait for the sweet release from our existence. We began spending more and more time taking turns at the cupola, staring down at the ravaged Earth. There was nothing. Yuri was the first to snap. We found him trying to open the airlock without a suit. Let me go. He screamed as Chen and Sarah wrestled him away from the hatch. I want to go home. Jenna, get the syringe, Chen screamed at me. It was the first time in the decade that I had known him where he showed true panic in his voice. One morning, doing my usual rounds of the ship, I woke to find David gone. His personal items were missing, along with a significant portion of our remaining food and water. One Soyuz capsule was still docked, but its systems had been sabotaged beyond repair and the other was gone. The idiots doomed us all, Sarah cursed. I had to spend an hour consoling her when she found out what David had done. I tried to look to the commander for guidance but Chen said nothing, he just stared out the window at the dead world below with a weird smile on his face. Dr. Patel threw himself into his work, analyzing data from our sensors, muttering about radiation levels and atmospheric composition. I think it was his way of staying sane, of pretending that any of it still mattered. The ozone layer seems to be holding stable, he announced one day. It had been months since our last communication with the planet. UV radiation levels are leveling off and the planet seems to be producing oxygen, there seems to be hopes of life. Chen nodded, his chubby face had become nothing but bone by now. But Patel just shrugged, continuing his little rant. It's possible that facilities are back online. But without a functioning power grid. It's almost impossible. Yuri had died in his sleep, his body just wasted away from malnutrition. We said no words during his funeral, we placed him in a body bag and stored him in the airlock with his favorite book. There was no way to give him a proper burial. You know, Chen said one day, His commanding voice was now barely a whisper. I always dreamed of going to Mars. Looks like we might never make it there after all. He gestured to the red planet, barely visible in the star-filled blackness. I always promised my brother I would go there, that we would build our perfect little space cabin in the middle of the wasteland, just him and me. He croaked, tears welling up in his eyes. It was as if the mention of his brother ignited something within Chen. We can't wait to starve. We'd have to go out on our own terms, said, floating towards the airlock. None of us said anything. We never said anything, but everyone had all been thinking the same thing and we knew it. Ready? Chen asked, his hand on the airlock release. Sarah nodded as tears floated from her eyes in glistening droplets. Dr. Patel had his lips closed and lips moving in a silent prayer. I took one last deep breath, trying to memorize every detail of my life before closing my eyes. The hiss of escaping air filled the chamber. As consciousness faded, I felt a strange sense of peace. In our final moments, we were closer to the stars than anyone had ever been. The stars, they had been our beginning and our end.